Hi, this is Matt, and this is another screencast for digital student portfolios. And this topic will be on progress portfolios. Just to review, from the performance portfolio screencast, we talked about learning targets, and they are visual, audio, or in text descriptions of the learning for that day. And it's critical that both the student and the teacher have a shared understanding of what is to be learned that day. It's a partnership, and we can create that partnership by getting feedback both from the teacher to the student and from the student to the teacher. Here was an example from last time of a learning target. This uses the I can framework from the book Learning Targets. We are learning to find proper nouns, and I can read a story and circle all the proper nouns I find. So as we set up the learning targets and thinking about the learning for that day, we want to consider the potential learning trajectory for our students. So we first need to know where I am now, the current reality. And that can be assessed through a free assessment, a quick quiz, any type of individualized assessment as well. And once we know where students are at, then we look at our curriculum, we look at the standards, we look at what's essential for understanding, and from that point we determine where is it we want to go, and that's the learning target. The critical piece of this then is if we know where our kids are at, we know where we want them to be, how can I close the gap, the understanding gap between where we're at and where we want to be within the content and or the process for learning. When I've talked with many staff members and I asked them, what drives you to get up in the morning? Why do you enjoy teaching so much? And what it is how teachers close the gap, how they see their kids learning. That's the thing that we get up for in the morning and make our teaching position so rewarding. Here are just some comments. I won't read them, but just some comments that have been personally shared with me about why teachers love doing what they do. So that brings us to Evernote again, and it's just our way to have a digital portfolio of our kids' work. It's trying to get us to be less paper dependent, not necessarily paperless, but just to give us some different ways to show students learning and what they know. And as we stated, access is a cornerstone. We have to have the right tools, the right technology, be able to know how to use them, but without a meaningful purpose or an authentic audience, technology just becomes another tool in the room, and it doesn't meet its full potential for how we can augment our instruction. And this is progress portfolios now. We talked about performance. It's more about mastery. It's a summative. It's more about the destination and its assessment of learning. With progress portfolios, like I said in the past slide, it's about growth over time. It's about getting to that point of mastery. It's what we would call formative assessment, or if you're thinking in terms of sports, the practice time. And if you think about athletics, the majority of sports teams spend their time in practice. So we really want to spend the majority of our time in classroom practicing. It's teacher guided, and it's a journey. It's the journey toward our destination, and it's assessment for learning, as long as we use that information we get from our formative assessments to guide and drive our instruction. So here is just a way you can very quickly put in pieces of writing into a progress portfolio. So here is my son's portfolio, and we took a snapshot of his first writing of school. The picture's a little faded, but you can see that a lot of words were misspelled, which is normal going into first grade writing. There were some annotations on it. It didn't write a whole lot. And that's okay. This is our current reality. This is where he's at right now. As we progress through the year, we embed the photos by clicking on the paper link and paperclip link, and then also adding some audio so that we can hear him speak aloud his own writing, which gives us a lot of information. We start to notice things, starting to use punctuation, writing more, The print is a little bit more easy to read. And now we're looking into November. Again, we're adding some audio, just allow them to read it aloud so that if we can't understand a word, we don't have to annotate it all the time. We can just have it there. When you share this with parents, it's really powerful too. To hear their child read their own writing is something pretty cool. And then here's a piece from spring. And if you go back to the first piece of writing, it's very clear how much growth has been made. Seems to take more pride in his work, and that's just really cool to see. And that's our driver, as we said, for teachers. So, how do we get to that point? A great concept is thinking about appreciative inquiry. David Copywriter came up with this about discovering what gives life, what's the best of, and where do we want to be? What will that best look like? And then helping kids discover their destiny by designing activities to help them grow. And it's strengths-based instruction. So here's just a simple protocol that you can use to focus on strengths. The teaching day is so chaotic sometimes and complex that we sometimes forget how we might do something because we're dealing with many things at the same time. So this is just called OWN. Very simple, just observe, wonder, next steps. This is based on some work from Coaching Conversations. They quote, "In coaching conversations, instead of giving advice, paraphrase what is said and ask powerful, open-ended questions that lead to deeper thinking." So a question for you, just to think about, why is this practice not regularly used when working with learners? And why do we need to be intentional about this type of feedback? So let's say we're working with Finn, my son, and we're wanting him to now reflect on his work. Here are some observational statements. You're really just stating the obvious. Let's review what you've written so far. I see you have included the strength of your writing is. Your idea is very exciting because this is all focused on strengths. It's objective, and it really kind of sets the table and builds that trust. When we start asking them to start improving on their work, they're going to be far more agreeable to those kinds of ideas instead of just starting out with, this is what's wrong. We're thinking about what's right. The next step of the OWN protocol is wondering. So here are some sample wondering statements. What part of your writing? Who is your audience? What is the most challenging part of? How do you feel about the amount of time you're putting into? Now we're starting to reflect on our experiences, which is where learning happens. Giving the child time to think is really important at this stage. And just this reflection piece is critical. It's often forgotten, but it's very important. And then next, as you end your individual conference with your child, here are some next step statements, just getting them to think what's the next step that they can improve upon. If you get to pick one part of your writing to revise, what do you need to do? What have you learned from? How can I best help you think through this? It sounds like you want to go back in this direction with your writing. So just in reflection, when we personalize learning for students, how does this impact both the process and the performance of their work? What instructional strategies, formative assessment, reflection can be enhanced when embedding digital tools into our teaching and learning? And finally, how does technology and being connected allow our students to showcase their learning in powerful and diverse ways?